Okay, so we're back to media planning, and now we're starting to think about our timing, our scheduling, and our monitoring. We've talked about these a fair few times, so now let's just start to dig into them a little bit more, just for clarity's sake, and just to understand what the key things are. So when we start to talk about timing, when we're looking at the timing, we're looking at what is the seasonality of our product, okay? Are there particular seasons, or does it operate in a particular pattern behind when people make the decision to buy? We need to think about also the consumer's, product purchase cycle. Certain goods and services or certain products have a longer turnaround time. If I'm thinking in terms of cars, it might be every 5 years they replace a car. Could be white goods in a house, we might be looking 5 to 10 years, whatever it happens to be. But also starting to think about, what's also the interval between the decision making and consumption, right? So at what point do they go, yeah, that seems like a good idea, and yes, I'll do it. And how much of a space in time is that? Okay, do they require more information? Do they shop around for months before making the final call and carrying it out? Do they think about it for a while? Is it a bit like a holiday? Whatever it happens to be. So we need to understand what that space is as well, and we need to start to think about if we have a new product or a new service that we're launching. What is the initial heavy advertising that we need to undertake to start to create that brand awareness? Right. So different things require different conversations. As I say. Are there a seasonal aspect, do things happen at a certain time around the calendar, summer, winter, etc., and what people are doing there? Starting to think about, well, how often or what's their purchase cycle? So do they purchase a new product every week? Are they going every month? Are they going every couple of years? What is the cycle there? Starting to think about what the decision-making cycle is between they decide they want something when they go out and purchase and consume, and also what our needs might be to start to create awareness for them and to think about how that might operate. Other questions to ask yourself is really, once again, how many people do I need to reach? Okay, so, what is my number of people? How many people do I need to reach with my message? Starting to think about how frequently, so, how many times? How many times do I need to receive the message to make sure what's going on? I need to also think about, well, how much money do I have to spend on this? Okay, do I have a limited budget? When's that going to be needed? When's the money available? How can I spend it? And also about thinking about, what vehicles I'm going to use. Is it going to be TV, radio, internet? What's it going to be when I go out there, okay? So I need to start thinking about how all these things are going to tie together. And then I need to think about, well, at what time does this need to occur? So that means in order to make that happen, I need to come up with some sort of schedule, all right? So I need to have a bit of a schedule there ready to go. And when we talk about scheduling, it is important to make sure that we're scheduling the communications activities and also thinking about the audience type that's going to be receiving that information. So, think about, if I'm putting this message out there, when's the best time for them to see it? Okay, so if I'm talking to, my advertising my product is a new toy for children, there's no point me advertising that toy for children at 3 o'clock in the morning. When are they going to want it? They're going to want it at birthdays, which are all year round, but I know that definitely at Christmas time they're going to want it. So straight away I get a sense of timing around a seasonal opportunity. So I need to think seasonally, as we get close to Christmas, my new toy, I can sell that. I need to think also about when are they going to receive this information? Well, I want to sell it to children, so they're going to be watching TV between the hours of maybe 3:30 in the afternoon when they get home from school till about 6:30 when they've had their dinner. So that's probably when I need to be in that space. That's if I'm advertising on TV, of course. So I need to put the message to the children on mass media. How many times do I need to promote my product? Remember, we're dealing with children. They'll probably forget by the time the ad break finishes. How much money is that going to cost me, and is that the most effective method? All right, so what am I tying into on the big picture of what's happening? How long does it take them to convince their parents? We talk about the difference between the time of thought and the time of consumption or purchase. Do they need time to convince their parents, what does it need? If it's going to be an expensive toy, they might need to spend a fair bit of time working up towards it. If it's just a quick, I want to go to McDonald's for a $5 meal, maybe that's a different conversation. So making sure my schedule is spot on, making sure that I've thought about those key timing, that will then lead me down into, starting to get into the continuity of my message, which is about, do I need to spread the message over several months evenly? Okay, so are we going to just go the same spend between here we are, so let's just say it's August to Christmas. Over the next 4 months, we're just going to continue to spend the same amount. Okay, so we're just going to have continuity. Are we going to use flight scheduling? Okay, and we'll jump onto that in a minute, where we're advertising across some months, but heavy advertising in others, or are we looking at going under a pulse method? And when we're talking about pulse, we're combining the scheduling methods. So we maintain a minimum level of continuity and then occasionally pulse and spread a bit more there. So continuous, keeps going one long line. Flight, heavy advertising at a certain point of time, and then we can just cut away. Or are we going to go with a pulse advertising where we have a big initial spend and then a smaller amount going on and then a big initial spend as well? So this one's a bit of a long time. This one's goes and then drops away. Or are we just going to go for a sort of a bit of a wave? Okay, we need to think about how we're spending the money and what's going to achieve the best effect. So we'll start to go into those in a bit more detail in a minute. Okay, so let's look at those in a bit more depth. We've talked about continuous, we've talked about flight, we've talked about pulsing. So let's actually have a bit more look at, we'll talk about continuous. Okay, with continuous, what we're looking to do is to continue to maintain the advertising, most of it or some of it, through the period of the campaign. So we've said we're going to have a 6-month campaign. So what we're doing is we're spreading it out over 6 months and maintaining that continuous input, okay? So it would be equal day to day, week to week, month to month across my spend until the end of that campaign. And what that would be primarily for is non-seasonal products, okay? So if we're just going to continue to advertise something for 6 months, it's going to cut across all sorts of different seasons and all that. We're not trying to be very specific. We're just trying to be consistent. We might run one ad every week in the local newspaper for 52 weeks and then stop. Okay, so we're not trying to take advantage of any particular seasonal thing. We're not trying to target anything the customer's doing necessarily. We're just going to roll with a whole year of advertising perhaps. So every week in the local newspaper, that's where I advertise my shop. Okay, and then it doesn't matter what's happening, just every week it's there. And that would be a sort of continuous approach. Okay, when I got down to the flighting approach, the way I'm approaching that one is, and this is the most widely used advertising technique, or probably one of the most there, and that's about building an audience awareness, okay? So what happens is we start to build up, we just build this massive amount of audience awareness by putting all the, that very heavy media advertising, and then we sort of just cut away, all right? So, and we let the message continue on. So we do a massive build up and then just let it fly, okay? This one, we're just doing a long line. This one, we're building it up and then flicking it off. Now we can then move away. What happens is obviously over time, awareness will fall back away again, but this will usually carry us over a long period of time, create a great amount of awareness, put that a big initial spend in there, get everyone to know about our local business perhaps, and it could be for a new restaurant or something like that. You see it quite a lot of times, particularly when someone's new. They get out there, create that massive amount of awareness, and then they can cut back on the advertising spend and really reduce it down. So what they want it to do is just to, while they're not advertising, people are still aware of it. There might be word of mouth. They might have the fridge magnet at home stuck to their fridge or their flyer or whatever it happens to be. It's a lot of stuff we can put into the community, and then, you've built the awareness now. Customers are aware of you. You don't need to keep spending the same money. So what it allows you to sometimes do is to get away with not having to consistently spend every week on the newspaper. Rather than buy 52 small ads in a newspaper, to advertise each week, I might for the first couple of weeks take out whole page ads, let everybody know about it, and it might still work out cheaper than 52 weeks worth and still achieve the same goal, if not a slightly better goal and a little ad in the corner somewhere. All right, so that can be pretty good there. Done correctly, yeah, it's going to have as good or possibly a better effect. Obviously, if you don't do it right, it's not going to happen. The other option is, as we say, you've got that sort of pulse where I take out the big ads, I'll get the big push, but then I've got these other smaller ads running at the same time, just to help keep the message in the front of people's mind. It's a bit of a blend of the two. Which one's the correct one? That's over to you once again. What do you want to do and how do you want to put it out there? That's going to be the key thing. But just come up with a strategy that you're going to want. Pulse is one that you see quite a lot, but flighting, just getting that big information push is great. Continuous is good just for week in, week out, up to you on what you want to achieve. Great for continuity, great for raising initial interest, probably a bit of a balance of the two. Not as cheap as this, not as expensive as that, and tries to achieve sort of, a foot in both camp. Up to you how you want to schedule that. Good luck with it, have fun. Okay, so that takes us really through to, if we've started to look at your timing, tying into those key events, tying into those key opportunities. You've now got a schedule that says that you're going to have a little bit of pulse advertising perhaps, and your pulse is that we're going to advertise all year, and then when we get near Christmas, we're going to engage in that real flighting approach where we're going to have a massive information pop out there to try and promote ourselves for Christmas or whatever it happens to be, and then we're back to business as usual the rest of the time. That's all sounding really awesome, but now we need to think about, well, how do we monitor that? How do we know if it worked? All right, so now we have to start coming up with a concept of how we're going to monitor our media performance. Okay, I know what the message is, I know all that sort of good stuff, but what I don't know is, are we effective? Okay, so what we need to start doing is starting to think about setting a key performance indicator, okay, or a KPI. We love those in management, talk about them all the time, they're fantastic. And we can have different KPIs. Perhaps the KPI is, reaching, the required audience. Did we get to the right people? And did we get to the right number of those people? Okay, I said I wanted to speak to 1,000 kids about my exciting new toy, 1,000 children between the age of 6 and 10. Well, did I speak to children between the age of 6 and 10? Yes. Did I get to the 1,000? No, we only got 500. Okay, we need to review what happened. All right, so that's what we're starting to talk about there. Are we getting the right audience with the right numbers? It could be conversion to paying customer. And what we're talking about there is if we've got sales staff or some sort of demonstrations that we're having, and as people come into us, if we get 100 people come to see the demo from my demonstration team, of that 100, how many do I want to turn into customers? Or how many people that try my product, they clicked on my website, I sent them the free trial, I can then send them a follow-up and say, hey, look, you enjoyed the free trial, we hope. Did you then buy the product? Yes, no, let us know what happened. That way we can start to work out whether or not our marketing was effective or they tried it and they gave us negative feedback, whatever it happens to be. We can also track likes and shares on social media. Okay, so we ran all these things. Did we get likes? Did we get shares? What happened? We've put a lot of effort into developing content or sharing other people's content. What happened next? Did we get enough people liking it? Are we getting people starting to traffic our site and starting to undertake what's happening? Comments. Okay, a like button is easy for someone to hit. They hit like, easy peasy. But are we actually looking for comments? Because comments starts to talk about engagement. Okay, are they starting to comment on what we're creating? Okay, if we're creating content, we want people talking about it, so it starts to create a discussion. Discussion leads to awareness. Awareness hopefully leads to expansion of our business. Right, and that's really what we want to get to. Or are we going to track inquiries? So, and we can talk about that by email, phone. Okay, so once we put that information out there, did we start getting phone calls? We've just advertised something. We've just talked about it. Did someone ring? What happened? Did they click the button for the email of information? Please send me now ways to make $1 million. Whatever it happened to be, what happened? All right. So when we start talking about monitoring, we need to make sure that somebody is in charge of that. Okay, we need to appoint someone who's going to monitor this information. I'm not saying, by the way, you have to monitor all this information, though it would be pretty cool if you did. But think about, we need to make sure that someone who has the job of understanding what that is and who understands what the media plan is. Okay, so the person needs to understand what it is that we're doing. They need to also understand what it is that we're wanting to see and then what's actually happening so they can track those stats. Okay, we need to outline to them a couple of key things. So first of all, once they know the context and know what they're doing, they need to look at, when do they need to monitor? So when do they need to compile the information? When do they need to monitor it? And when do they need to provide it to you? We also need to let them know where they can gather the data. So where are we accepting the data from? Is it go to my Facebook page and dig it out? Is it go to this spot? Is it go to that spot? So where's the information coming from? And they also need to know is where's the information then going to be stored? So where do I get it from? And where do I store it when I'm done with it? Because remember, we want to keep this data, okay, for particularly later when we want to go back and do a comparison. How did this campaign work against that comparison? And then we need to think about, are they storing it then on a data spreadsheet? Is it raw information, a table, database? Okay, how's this information coming back in? What if it's a whole pile of feedback forms? What if you've gone to a shopping centre and people have been filling out surveys and reviews? What do we do with the originals? Are we scanning it all and keeping it? Are we keeping them in a filing basket? What happens to them? What do you want this person to do? and how long are they going to keep that information for. And then what the whole purpose of that is we can then analyze the information, see what's happening, see what's working, and then we can start to adjust the media or adjust the content so they can actually go forward and then, and come up with either the next marketing plan that we want, or alternately start to adjust the plan we've got at the time. It might be that feedback's coming back, people going, oh yeah, look, I went onto your website, but I can't find the link. And then we realize because the link's like 4 clicks along or something like that, so we know to bring it forward. Now, when we bring it forward, obviously the first thing we're going to do is say we brought it forward on that day, what changed? So every time we make a change or something, we have to monitor and say, well, what happened as a result of that change? All right, so the key point here is to make sure you've got monitoring, that you know when you're going to monitor, you know when you're going to talk about it, you know what they need to monitor, you know where they're going to get the information from, what they're supposed to do with the information when they get it, where you want to keep your information. They've got clearly set KPIs on what it is you want to measure, whether they're getting to the number of audience, whether they're getting to the right audience, how we're converting, how people are participating with us, liking, sharing, commenting, or whether they're making inquiries. Okay, so we're spending a lot of money here, or depending on how much you spent, and we need to make sure we're getting the right result. All right, so that's it. Think about how you want to come across that. There's heaps of tools out there. Get on it. No worries. Have fun with your monitoring.